Welcome to Social Proof, a podcast with Soapbox Influence. I'm Beth Stevens, and I'm thrilled to be here today with Katie Goodman. Hey, Katie.
Hello, I'm excited
How
too.
are you?
I'm well.
Okay, I must immediately disclose that you said you were on vacation. You're so kind to do this with us.
Oh
Where are
gosh,
you? Are you
no
somewhere
way.
fun?
I sort of. I'm in Boston, where I
Okay,
grew up,
okay, I love it.
snooping on my college kid, and I see you're in a hotel room
Yes, exactly. This is,
on
as
the
I was
road.
just telling you, my first time to do this on the road. I usually like to be sitting in the studio.
Yeah.
But yes, that familiar hotel room background. So
Yes.
much fun. And then I have one more place-based question, and actually, maybe you can give a little background on where you're from before we dive into who you are. But I think I saw a Bozeman, Montana area code this morning from you calling.
Yes.
So wow, what's the cacophony of
No,
places
I
here?
actually live in many places. I live in New York. I live in Brooklyn in Park Slope, and that's my main place. And I spend the summers in Montana, where I own a
Oh,
theater camp with 300
oh yes,
crazy kids. So
I
I
love it.
lived there for a long time, and I had a theater there and toured from there. So I kept the.
Yeah.
It's a good conversation piece.
I love that. It is. It is. Here we are conversing about it. So, well, Katie, tell us who you are in addition to that amazing theater camp.
Okay. I'm a comedian. I'm mostly an actress, a musical comic, and a director, and a writer. And I do satirical, political, pretty lefty, feminist comedy. I have a show that tours, it ran off Broadway, and we tour all around the world called Broad Comedy. And we've raised $2 million for women's health and LGBTQ issues and ACLU and things like that.
I love it.
And in addition to that, I'm a keynote speaker. That's how you and I know each other.
Yes.
And so I speak on the topic of how to use the tools of improv comedy to handle the unexpected and change, and
Yeah.
how to love that instead of fight it, since
Yeah.
everything's all the time. What do we want to do?
That's such a perfect segue. There are so many things I want to ask you about. But yes, I had the good fortune of seeing you on stage, as well as at dinner and in various other life moments throughout the conference we attended for Next Up, the women's organization. I thought it was so apropos that you were part of it, kicked the week off, and did the keynote. And I have to admit, I've heard a number of improv speakers have been involved in improv and have always been super lukewarm about it. I get it. I love it for others, but I have to say, until your keynote, it just didn't really hit home. And I loved your approach to working with the unexpected and thinking about how we use that and interpret that. So will you dive into that just a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think maybe it is hard to apply. I can understand why maybe it sometimes misses the mark. I think people who are in the arts totally see every day how it affects us, and it's hard to explain. So, as
Yeah.
somebody who was like a life coach and a sort of, lifelong, whatever, meditator and all that,
Yes.
paying attention to the self-help world, I've and I've written a book on it, so that does help you help say it.
I love
But
it.
yeah, so I basically, what I like to do is I like to kind of put people, I think, need sort of a frame, but what I really like to do is have it be very interactive, because the whole I do and I understand theory,
Yeah.
as opposed to just listening. And as somebody who's mildly ADHD, it's hard for me to sit and just listen to somebody talk. I
Yes.
zone out and I can't really apply it, and I forget it. So,
Mhm.
so what I try to do is I find there's like 8 tools, which no one's ever going to remember. But if you do
Right.
8 exercises, hopefully you'll
Yeah.
remember. And it's things like, the obvious ones are be flexible,
Hmm.
don't get attached to not necessarily the outcome, but the way you're going to get to your goals. I
Right.
think, and obviously, we've all just had this shit show for 2 years. I mean, none of us are like doing anything, or maybe we are now, but we weren't doing things the way that we thought we'd be doing them. We had
Right.
like a lot of us had our children right behind us while we're trying to go to work all day.
Right.
And so how do you adjust? And I just hope to never hear the word pivot again, but how to do all that. Um, and but other things like how, just how to be present, how to yes and
Yes.
we talked about that. So instead of and I think what's important about that is creating a culture, whether it's in your family, your main relationships, work,
Mm-hmm.
anywhere. How do you create a culture of yes and? So yes and is like,
Mm,
I talked about this, like, hey, look at that pink elephant. And then
right.
someone's like, what pink elephant? And it just falls flat. The
Yeah.
scene just
Yeah.
dies. But if you're like, oh, and it's standing on your mother-in-law or whatever, then you can picture
Right.
something and kind of move on and have ideas. And I think where people get hung up is they're like, yes, but my coworkers have terrible ideas. Or, and my children want to do these things that I'm just a hard no.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I
so
love that.
the deal isn't to be like yes to everything, but it's yes, I heard you. Yes, I
Hmm.
see you're trying to come up with an idea, or you're trying to, and let you get your
Thwart.
ears pierced. And then so that's the yes part. It's affirmation and acceptance. And then the and part is adding something to it. So like
Hmm.
if you're in a brainstorming session with, let's say like I'm thinking about influencers, but like with your
Right.
designer or whatever, it's like, oh, I see what you got me. And I want to add that,
Right.
and you don't want to add like, this is terrible, but add like, instead of this, I need this to look, more friendly.
Right.
Yeah. And actually, this is kind of funny because I just did this yesterday. I directed a short that we
Hmm.
just finished, and it took months, and it
Okay.
was so much fun. And I'm
I
just
love
loving
it.
directing film, and it's going into all
Oh, I
these
love that.
festivals. So we have to have a
Right.
poster, and my designer sent me like 10 things,
Mm.
8 of which were just completely off the mark. And she's lovely, but she does that on purpose to try to give me like this broad range to sort of pick
I
from,
love
because like
that. Yeah.
we talked about it at the event. It's very hard to create in a vacuum, because if
Right.
somebody's like, give me an idea, go, do a scene,
You're
go,
like,
write a book, go, your brain is like, whoa, it could be 1
yeah.
million things. So
Yeah.
if somebody gives you a whole bunch of things, you're kind of constrained a little bit, and then you can go,
Hmm.
oh yeah,
React.
this, except it looks like a horror movie, which is actually what one of them looked like. You're like, no.
That's actually fun.
It's funny because so my husband wrote it and I directed it, and it's for Broad Comedy Does It Live, and then we
Okay.
translated it, which was so lucky that that it worked perfectly for film without a single line change.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
it's called it's about a support group for women named Karen. Were actually named Karen. So she made one that was like the Karens, and it was like absolutely terrifying looking,
That's
funny,
awesome. Yes.
but misleading, So I was like,
Right.
yes, and
Right. You're like, let's go ahead and
really
apply
happened.
this.
So
That's
anyway,
awesome.
just I can go on as forever about it, but
I love
basically,
that.
there's trying to break it down into different tools, and I encourage people to kind of pick one a week. Like for
Hmm.
example, yes, and your family for a week, but another one
Yeah.
would be allow yourself to get lost.
Hmm.
So
Big fan of that.
literally, maybe, but it could also be like getting lost in a bookstore or getting lost on a
Right.
menu. Do
Right.
new things, meet people
Right.
you've never like. And so those are like a little practice that you could do that is improvisational.
Hmm.
And it gets you more comfortable with the unknown.
Right.
And that's
Well, and once
what
you
I do.
walked through it in that manner, I mean, there was so much that resonated for me. And, even those, I love that thought process of those 8 tactics, as it were, as almost a meditative practice and something that you might go through over, say, an 8-week period, and just as an exercise in expanding yourself, or an exercise in, expanding your worldview. I think that's really neat. So we'll drop those in the show notes for sure.
Oh, good. Yeah. And there's like in my book, there's processes of ways to actually practice it too. So,
Hmm.
but I can give you the little shortened version of it. But, um,
Yeah.
one of the things that's pretty fun, it was kind of interesting about though, too, trying to take something and I wonder if some entrepreneurs can relate to this, but take something that is a group activity and
Right,
turn it into a solitary activity, which was the book, when
right.
intrinsically creativity is collaborative. So, which part of it is just you and your mind, and maybe like a book of prompts to stay
Right.
creative? And when do we need, as entrepreneurs, do we need other people to run ideas by and stay in
Hmm.
community and stay in connection and help each other? I have so
Yeah.
many different groups in my life of, like, I have a
That's
speakers
so
group of four.
healthy.
I know, I
Yeah.
love it.
I do
Yeah.
too, honestly. And I think even to the point we just made about travel, I find myself occasionally, off somewhere solo or, traveling with a coworker, whatever the case may be. And I find those trips to be cathartic and resetting for me. Just, getting out of your norms, right? Which I love my norms, like you. I have a lot of those tendencies. But I find when those are disrupted, or I'm alone in an airport, or have time traveling or on a road trip, that's when some of my best thoughts kind of come unlocked and, start to gel and make sense for me. So I feel like that has some
Yeah.
synergy here.
Yeah, and the only thing I will admit is I'm actually a little bit obsessed with newness. And so I don't have a lot of norms anymore. I mean, I did for a long time when I ran a theater. And then in the summer, during the summer months, my camp is like very set every day.
Sure.
But every day, you were asking, one of the pre-questions that you'd asked me was like, when do you work? And I was like, you know,
Whatever.
I'm not like, I can only work before breakfast when the sun's coming up. I mean, I know a lot of artists who are like that. And I'm like, when I work? When I have a deadline.
Yes.
That's when I,
Don't we all? Don't we all? And we'll
but
get
every
into
day
what
is
we're
different. Yeah, sorry.
I love that. We'll keep going on it. No, not at all. Well, as we get into the books we're reading and some of the things we're consuming, that'll be fun because that's top of mind for me right now as well. But so talk about your day. It's schizophrenic. It's all over the board. What does it look like?
Well, it's a little bit different than the last year and a half because my kid just went off to college. So we're empty nesting. And,
Yeah.
so in between sobbing and drinking heavily, um,
Relatable.
I am. No, I'm actually just so excited for them that they're doing so well. I get on a plane and go to a
Speaking
workshop.
engagement.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and now we're starting to do the comedy shows again. That was kind of the last thing to come
I love
back,
it.
especially things like we do Planned Parenthood gigs. And what's been hard is, and understandable, is that they're healthcare
Right.
folks, so they're extra uninterested in having a super spreader event than anybody else. So,
Good point.
yeah, so we're doing more things like colleges and other
Yeah.
theaters and things like that. So that's
Right.
really fun. I love performing for young people.
Oh, I
Um,
bet. I bet that's
yeah,
particularly exciting and rewarding.
oh, it's so good. And I mean, as somebody who runs a camp, I work on, my staff is like
Hmm.
40 people under 22. So, but
That's awesome.
yeah, it's interesting. So I don't know. Yeah, a normal day is desperately trying to find healthy food in an airport, I think. That's
Also extremely relatable. That's so
extremely difficult.
difficult. You just
Yeah.
feel bad about yourself at the end of the day, I feel like. So,
Or just
at
gross.
risk, yeah, just gross in general. So, at risk of mentioning the word pivot, but not with too much intent, I want to go back to something we were talking about here at the beginning, and just the way we've all adjusted. And you hopped off to fiddle with the printer, and I'm here with my hair very wild today in a hotel room. And I love this. I feel like, if there's good in what we've experienced over the last 2 years, it's that vulnerability and realness have seeped back into conversations and in the workplace. And I think if not craving it, we all at least welcome or anticipate it. It's so normal. We had a team call yesterday and someone had a kitten in her lap. So I'm so sorry, the cat's not taking no for an answer. And I
Yeah.
think it's letting us reconnect as humans in a way that
Yeah.
we've gotten so robotic. So I suspect you have opinions on that. Can you speak
Oh
to it?
God, yeah. And I think also from a feminist point of view, like I remember in the middle of the pandemic, I had to take I can't remember what the I can't remember who it was or what it was, but I remember this woman she was like helping me with something like insurance or something. And in the background, her baby's like sobbing. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh my God, totally, you
Like,
can
please
go take
go.
care of
Yeah.
that And she's like,
Yes.
no, 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 it's fine. I'm sorry. And you could hear she kept turning her sound off. And I finally said to her, I was like, hey, if I can't support you in taking 5 minutes to uh, deal with a baby during this, then like that's on me, man. And so she did. And then we had the nicest chat
Of
afterwards.
course you
I was
did.
like
Yeah.
it gets better. Mine's 17, I
Yes.
swear to God, it gets easier. But
Yeah.
I think it's sort of a fucked up culture if we're like not able to treat each other as humans, and we're like this word professional with a capital P has just kind of gotten
Right.
gross. Like, of
Yeah.
course I
Yeah.
get it.
Yeah.
Um, but like why?
Right.
Why do we care so
Right.
much? Yeah.
So on that note, I think that's a really cool kind of transition into obviously we're an agency in the influencer and social media realm and do a lot with retail marketing and big brands. And so more often than not, the individuals who I invite on the podcast are just individuals who impacted me, right? I had an interaction and I thought, yes, you must come and join us. And so often they say, well, I'm not an influencer, right? Like that's not my craft. It's not what I'm doing by
Right,
day.
right.
But very, very much you wield influence from that small interaction with the woman on the call, presumably an insurance agent, to, the way that you commanded a crowd of 1,000 and gave a pep talk to 1,000 women and wielded your influence there. So can you talk about that? Do you have guardrails around how you conduct yourself? Of course, you asked if cursing was okay at the
Yeah.
beginning of the podcast, so that doesn't count. But but what are some of the
Yeah, I
things that you
just needed
hold
to lean
yourself
into
to?
that.
Yeah, really, just lean in. But
Sorry, everybody.
what do you hold yourself to? Right? What are those
Yeah.
guardrails for you?
I think like let me talk outside of speaking because in when I do speaking, corporate speaking, I don't swear and I don't bring up my politics unless it's like an all women's event and they want me to or something, or it's
Right.
somehow politically motivated. But
Hmm.
so I think that's just because it's distracting, right? Like it takes away from what
That
we
makes
can
sense.
all agree on. So, but in terms of like, kind of, I'm sort of interested in your question from a political satirical point of view.
Yeah.
So when I do broad comedy shows and we're writing, my husband and I write together. So we're writing new
Hmm.
material and the questions are like, what can we tackle? Like
Hmm.
we completely rewrote all our material last April because
Mm.
thank God we didn't have to really totally, well, in April, we felt like we didn't have to talk about Trump too much again. So we were like, let's dump all that
Okay,
stuff.
we
And,
can move
you
along.
know, yeah. And also, I mean, we wrote a sketch I absolutely love about how the pandemic and also how you can't write satire anymore because it's like writing itself. But so that was fun. But in terms of like holding sort of, let's see, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but in terms of of influence,
Mm.
we are highly aware of that because we're writing things like we wrote a song. You can see it on YouTube. It's called Intersectionality, and one of my black actresses came up and was like, "Can we will you guys write a song on this?" And so she was like, because as feminists, we're always talking about issues as women. She's like, but how much harder it is for black women, and then how much harder it is for gay black women, like, and on and on and on,
Mhm.
disabled, whatever. So we wrote a song where I'm really stupid and I don't get it. And she's like, oh yeah, like the intersection between you and me, we're all the same. And she's like, no, let's talk. And then
Yeah.
we do this. And I think like that for me, as wanting to have influence on the conversations in the culture, we're always thinking about what are we saying? How are we saying it a little bit differently, maybe a little bit more edgy? So like
Right.
you have already used my favorite word, authenticity, which is too bad that it's getting overused, but I really
It
love that
is,
word.
but
But
it's okay.
and people trust you immediately when you use humor or sometimes self-deprecating humor, but you seem
Right.
honest. And
Right.
so, and I'm pretty honest. Then there's other pieces we've done like, um, the culture moves so fast and is changing
Yeah.
so fast right now. And I'm sure your influencers and people on social media know this. It's like something you posted 6 months ago, you look back and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I gotta take that down.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
exactly.
right. I mean, we wrote a song like 4 or 5 years ago called it was an a cappella, like a humorous a cappella style song called Gay Is So Last Year. And it was about, it was about the whole about sort of about like middle-aged people having a hard time figuring out like what's trans, what's intersexual, what's like on and on and
Hmm.
on. And what was so funny about doing it live, kind of in middle America, it wasn't in New York. I think it would have done much better in New York. Was half the audience was like, "What are you talking about? I don't understand this," and the other half was like, "Oh, we're way past this,
Holy
girl."
cow.
Yeah, it was so crazy. We were like, "Oh my God, I don't even know what to do with this piece." So we kind of were like, "Let's just wait a year or two." And now I feel like I
And
could rewrite it like
throw it
way
out
better.
there. Yeah, yeah.
You're writing stuff, and as influencers, you're responding to stuff like in the freaking moment, like right, in the
Yeah, that's
news, right?
improv right there.
And how do you have like sort of that um, brilliant observational like commentary that's right on the mark? Like you're
Right,
not gonna be some of the time. You're gonna miss the mark
right,
because it's
right,
happening so fast and you have so little time to process it.
right.
Not just politics, but like just anything in the culture. If you're like commenting, like I even think of something like Kanye, right? Like I've
Right.
just for years just been like, why are we giving this guy a
What?
platform? And especially if I'm so totally immersed in the gay community between theater and my material
Mm.
and stuff. And he's been so awful there. And then all of a sudden, so all these like gay fashion designers are like giving him shows and stuff. And I'm like, I don't understand this. And then,
Yeah.
overnight, everyone's like, okay, bye.
Yeah.
you know, and it's
Yes. Yeah.
and I wasn't sorry. That sounded like I was saying like I knew before everyone. That's not all I was saying.
Right,
I
right,
was
right.
just
No, I
say
follow.
like, when do you comment? Because I
Yep.
was a little
When's the
afraid to say
moment
anything.
to strike? Yeah.
Yeah, like I don't want to be like a white woman like dissing this like incredibly talented black rapper like at the wrong moment either. Like
Right.
especially during Black Lives Matter. And so
Right.
everything's so loaded.
Yeah.
You just have to be
Yeah.
so like careful. But if I feel like if you are as an influencer, just being authentic, like here's a thought. I'm not sure I'm right, but dot dot
Yeah.
dot. You know what I
Putting
mean?
it
As
out
a
there.
Yeah, but not in like a wimpy sort of like, I don't know what I think, but like
Right.
I may disagree with this tomorrow, but let's chat.
Right,
Sort of
right. Here's
or
where I am
something.
today. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I love that. I love that because I think that to your point, and it goes back to what we were just discussing with authenticity and vulnerability, right? It's just that willingness to put yourself out there and to have
yeah,
an opinion and to be seen and be approachable. And I think that's such a big deal. And so much of what you're doing, I think, as well, I've noticed, for example, since we connected, a lot of the midterm stuff and the videos and the songs that you're putting on LinkedIn, which I think is brilliant because that's a bit of an unexpected, in fact, in a lot of ways, when I scroll my feed and I see typical, 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 and I'm like, oh, this is going to be rich, right? So let me turn up the
yeah,
volume,
good.
right? So I think that's so fun. So talk a little bit about that and how you've explored social media with your work and how you make decisions to put things out there in snippets.
Yeah. So if Tana, she's both in broad comedy and also our company
Okay.
manager. If she if she were here, I would say, well, she knows how to do.
Yeah, she knows what to do.
We write the content together, but she's definitely got her finger on the pulse. She's also a bit
Yeah,
younger, not to be like ageist about it, but I'm a
yeah.
little bit behind. We just got TikTok like last,
It's okay.
and we started putting our videos on it, but we were very resistant. But no,
I can relate.
what's your question exactly? Like, how do we choose what to put up? Or
Yeah, well, I think in a lot of ways you're putting content on different social
yeah,
platforms and you're teasing out snippets of your work,
yeah, I
right?
see.
And that's meant to be a lead, right? It's a hook, of course, like pull me in and teach me more.
Yeah,
So I'm just curious, I guess, how some of those conversations go, what you put on
yeah.
which platforms and how you present on those platforms.
Yeah, and I think like that's interesting that you say it's to draw you in, which is probably true. I hope that is what it's doing, and it's sending people to the Broad Comedy YouTube channel.
Hmm.
Um, but it's also like you can say in 30 to 60 seconds one joke about like I think what you're referencing is we did some pieces using some like super crazy pants people's words, and
Yeah.
I just wrote
Yeah.
music to it as
Yes.
if it was a folk song.
And said, thank you so much for the content, right?
Yeah, and yes, exactly. And we were like, we don't have to work very hard anymore. It's written for us. But I think like my hope is that actually we put those out right before the election, and I wanted people to see like, like whatever it was, the line, climate change makes the trees grow was one of the songs.
Yes.
And I was like, maybe two people will notice that and not actually vote for that person or something.
Yeah, not just a hook, but a stance. Yeah.
Yeah. I think like maybe that's enough. Like I'm not sure these days how many people go beyond social media. They're like, oh, I saw it on there. And also they may not want to watch a 4-minute song. Yeah.
Right. But
So
hopefully
if
they
we're
get some exposure to your work, and you see that ripple effect, right?
Yeah. And it does help us get asked to go do performances live, which of course is what we want to be doing. So
Right. Well, I think it's brilliant to have that content on LinkedIn, and it's been fun. So we'll put that link out there as well and encourage people to go check it out. So
good.
I can't believe we've talked this long already. We actually have been kind of cruising, and in a lot of ways, this has been one of my favorite conversations, and I say this with delight, because we've been so all over the board. And typically we do, I think, follow a bit more of the, like, here are the questions, but it's been fun to see where this has led. I think that's been really entertaining and fun. So a nod to improv, as it were, I guess. So, okay, so I definitely want to make sure that we have time for me to ask my favorite questions, which are what you're consuming, right? And I usually break this into two seemingly similar questions. One is content-wise, what are you devouring? So a book, a series, an article, just something that has your attention right now. And then conversely, what's something you're so into right now? And sometimes that's as simple as, oh my God, I found this great new coffee cup. It's amazing, right? So first and foremost, because I think we'll talk about it a bit longer, what are you devouring or consuming?
I know that I answered this in an email and now I can't remember, but I'm reading, I guess I'm reading Less is Lost. Is that what I said? Yeah.
I'm trying to remember now. Yeah.
I'm reading a lot, but I used to read self-help just like endlessly, and I am not doing that anymore. That's been like 5 years ago.
Graduated.
I get graduated. Or just nonfiction at all. I think since the pandemic, I just need to,
you're like, enough.
escape. I just need to escape. So reading a lot but I'm also reading, since I'm writing a rom-com film, I'm reading a lot of rom-com novels, which inspires me. So trying to find smart ones that are funny and not just like raunchy for no reason, but like, that are interesting sociologically too.
Yeah. So what are some examples?
Yeah. Oh God, now that you said that. This one's so embarrassing, but I'm just going to say Red, White, and Royal Blue. It's a gay rom-com, but it's the main characters. Well, one's like a prince or some stupid shit, but the other is actually a son of a politician, so of a woman running for like president or something. So that whole world was actually more fascinating to me than like So it's a hugely popular book, so I'm not too embarrassed. But I'm, my husband's a novelist, and also all of my friends. So be honest, I'm endlessly reading my friends' books too, which
that's hilarious.
Is interesting. So I'll tell you about them when they're published.
That's great.
Were you asking what am I watching?
Sure, keep going. What, like a podcast, a show, a series? What are you consuming?
Well, my new favorite podcast is actually a plug for my dear friend Ophira Eisenberg, who has a new one called Parenting is a Joke. And she interviewed
I love it already.
comedians who are parents. And it's so great. And I'm going to be on there in a little while, but in a few months, but talking about empty nesting. But right now she's doing all the younger stuff, I think.
Okay, I love it. I can't wait for that. I will absolutely go find it. I'm laughing as well about that because I'm So again, traveling, and I feel so ridiculous because I'm a big reader, although it's cyclical. And right now I'm in the middle of one book, but I was really close to finishing it. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll bring that one. And I do possess a Kindle, but I just get a lot of satisfaction out of reading a book at an
Yeah.
airport or wherever. So I'm like, well, I have to bring that one, but I need a backup book because I'll finish that book and I'll need another book. Well, then in the airport, I bought a book. So now I'm like toting around three books. Three books. I have no business carrying around three books. But I finished the one I bought. I finished the one I should have started when I finished the other two already. That's the one I have to talk about because have you read any of these? I'm so bad at this. The Last Interview series.
Oh, no, I have
I'm
not.
riveted. So this one's
Yeah.
Anthony Bourdain, but there's a whole bunch of other ones,
Huh.
from Hemingway to Prince to, yeah, Ray Bradbury. Oh, there goes my AirPod. We'll grab that. Work with
Yeah.
that. But they're very, very interesting because it's a compilation of the last, 8 or 10 or 12 interviews before that person leaves us. And in particular, you see that, descent or that transition. With Anthony Bourdain, it's just riveting. But man, they're so well written. And a lot of
Yeah.
them are just the translation of those actual conversations. So, for example,
Yeah.
with Anthony Bourdain, there's one with Trevor Noah that happened just a few months before Anthony Bourdain passed away. And so it's just really interesting stuff and great writing.
Yeah.
So that's my plug
Huh.
on that. Now I'm going to have to go read all of them because they're very quick, day reads.
Yeah.
So
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. And then what's something you're so into right now? The thing you won't shut up about with your friends or your family that, it might be, I don't know, a new coffee mug, a new show, workout. I don't know, something you're really fired up about.
Oh my God. This is so narcissistic though. My film, but it's not
I
because
love it.
it's whatever. It's because I'm learning
Yeah.
to do
You're
something
passionate about it.
new. Yeah, and actually I can make it a little bit more general and more interesting than something else.
Less self-focused.
Which is about me, which is what's interesting to me about this process and maybe learning something. First of all, like during the pandemic, my work ground to a halt because it turns out all I do is gather 700 people inside a room, right? For everything I do. So I learned to
Yeah.
cook and I got certified in interior design and
Of course you did.
I learned to paint. So like I did 3 things that were completely new. So I'm very into, I love newness. I love
You're in
newness.
love with new. That's my
Yeah.
favorite new thing.
So with the thing about this that is really interesting, and I also think it's kind of interesting as an entrepreneur or solopreneur, as we use that term, is that again, the pandemic was horrific for everybody, but it's awful for people who are extroverts. And
Yes.
so I was
Amen.
just, yeah. So now, so now I've got a partner, which is my DP, my cinematographer, my director of photography. And he's amazing. Sam Henriquez, he's just brilliant. And we're going to be just doing hopefully tons of projects together. And what I
love that.
love about this, so when you're a theater director and like, I don't know, like a novelist or any of these other things, or running your own company, like not everybody has like a partner,
Yeah.
I have that with Tana, but so creatively, I mean, I have a cast, but as a director,
Yeah.
I don't
That's
have,
very
nobody like turns to their stage manager and goes, what do you think? I mean, not usually, right? That's very
right.
unusual.
Mhm.
So all your decisions are not only made on your own as a theater director, but they're like, you have to take all responsibility for it. So
Yeah.
kind of really cool new thing about film directing is you don't make a single step without your DP.
Oh, wow.
You
That's
talk through
interesting.
absolutely everything together. And I was like, I love this. This is
Yeah.
great. I need an external processor. I do that with my poor husband when I'm writing something, whether he wants to talk about it or not. And, so that has been really interesting in so many levels. And I want to make sure that going forward, everything I do is much more like I don't take on anything unless there's a team,
A
or
collaborator.
at least
Yeah.
a partner. Yeah. It's
That's
so,
great.
yeah, it's right up my, and I do that. My husband and I write together, but this is different. So.
No, I love that. I mean, when we listen for those sound bites, right, in an episode
Yeah,
and think about that thing that you can pluck out and make actionable, I think that's a really
yeah.
interesting tip. So, okay, so what's last question for you? What's next? You have so many new projects because you love new, but is it the film or is it something you haven't told us about yet?
Yeah.
What's coming down the pike for you?
No, it's film. I mean, I'm going to be
Yeah,
directing more things, but I will be in them also, which is hard to
love that.
direct yourself and like jump up and look at the camera, sit back down. It's tricky. And I'm going to just be auditioning again, which I haven't done in probably like 7 years.
Wow.
Working on a friend's film and stuff like that. And also the parts I play are really different now, right?
Yeah,
Like
I
I'm not
love it.
going to be playing the mother of a 3-year-old. I'm
Right. Yeah.
54.
Yeah.
So now I'm the lawyer.
Yes.
Whatever.
We had an internal photo shoot within our company of about 50 people recently, and they sent an email around to the entire team and said, we're looking for last minute, we need a 45 to 55-year-old mom for this photo shoot. And I'm like, I'm not really sure why this was a company-wide blast. You could have just said, Beth, we need you on this photo. Like, I understand I'm the only one who's suited to this particular photo shoot, but thank you for letting me volunteer for it.
Yeah,
That
right.
was
That was an
great.
HR kind of
I know, right? So politically correct. But Katie, this has been so much fun. I feel like we are going to have links for days in the show notes to all of your work. I've loved exploring your website and seeing all the things
Aw.
you're doing, and can't wait to get my hands on your book because clearly
Thanks.
I'm short on things to read. So,
Also, what I can do just to make it easy if somebody's listening and they're not a show notes person is if
yeah.
they go, if you just type in, let's make sure I have it right. You text 33 and then 777. You can, yeah, that's correct. I'll send you, we do this little thing like, and then it asks for your email or whatever. And then we send
Cool.
you a bunch of like worksheets on,
I
how
love
to
that.
jag your inner critic.
Yeah.
So you go 33777, and then in the message you write my name, Katie, Katie,
Okay.
and the rest
Okay.
takes care of itself. So
That's so cool. Well, you are very trendy and influential. Look at you. So I will do that immediately following the call and we'll be sure to share it. And that's so fun. This has been a blast, Katie. Thank you.
so
Can't wait
fun,
to
Beth.
see what you do
Glad
next.
to see you again. Yeah.
You as well.
All right.
Bye.
Take care. Thanks for having me.